You might already know this, and in fact, you probably do, but Dana White news is no longer really a function of what goes on in the fight world. I mean, yes, of course, it's predominantly about what happens in the fight world, but not exclusively, and it hasn't been that way for some time, but we're really entering a different phase here. Just 2 days ago, Dana White, UFC CEO, some people were calling him president, same thing, basically, in this particular case, was named to the board of Meta. Meta, of course, formerly known as Facebook. Yes, this is Mark Zuckerberg's giant information company, essentially, right? This is Facebook, this is Instagram, this is WhatsApp, this is Threads, this is a lot of things, you name it. Dana White was named to that board. And you might be asking, why would they do that? What would be the point of something like this? And actually, it is not in any way accidental. It is not in any way something that they probably didn't consider with an enormous amount of due diligence. It actually makes a lot of sense. Let's unpack it. First things first, you might ask, what does a board of directors do? This one's pretty straightforward, no big deal here. They do a few things. One, they just kind of give a broad leadership in terms of what the bigger decision making the company makes. Is it in line with what they want? Is it in line with what they do? Does it make sense? They look at financial performance. Are we spending money in the right ways? Are we using our money for acquisitions in smart ways? They typically appoint the CEO. Now, in this particular case, Mark Zuckerberg is both chairman of the board as well as Meta CEO, but you get the idea. That's generally what they do, and things like that. And of course, the board is typically made up of a group of people who have, relative to what Meta does, maybe a diverse set of experiences in the business or political leadership world, or some combination of both. It'll be people who are involved in tech. You'll see some people like that on the board, but there's more than just that there. And Dana White, in that particular sense, in terms of bringing something to that board, in terms of a diverse experience and success in the business world, I would say loosely meets that definition of the kind of thing that they're looking for. So it's that. It's oversight. It's giving a different perspective. It's guidance. It's review, that kind of a thing. Dana, for his part, had a press release put out where he said the following, quote, "I've never been interested in joining a board of directors until I got the offer to join Meta's board. I am a huge believer that social media and AI are the future," said Dana White, president and CEO of the UFC. "I am very excited to join this incredible team and to learn more about the business from the inside. There is nothing I love more than building brands, and I look forward to helping take Meta to the next level," end quote. Zuckerberg referenced AI, wearables, and the future of human connection when he announced Dana White to be on the board, as well as two other names. I tend to think that that's just really a smokescreen. I don't really believe he's being brought in for his vast expertise in social media or an understanding of where artificial intelligence is or headed, although there is some connection to the business, right? Dana White obviously has been asking Zuckerberg to bail out the company to get new AI rankings involved. But even with all of that is just a consumer kind of interest. I don't really believe he's being brought in to give leadership on these issues. In fact, I think it's something very distinct from all of this. Because I was not born yesterday, you are going to have to forgive me. I am deeply skeptical of the idea that Dana White was brought onto the board of Meta because he is a meaningful contributor in any kind of way to artificial intelligence, wearables, or the future of human connection. No, in fact, there's a different kind of connection that you should be making in your mind, namely, just follow the money on this one. Folks, in April, Meta has an antitrust trial that has been looming for quite some time. Yes, indeed. Why? Well, the government, specifically the FTC, accused them and suggested that in 2012, the purchase of Instagram, or 2014, the purchase of WhatsApp, that they overpaid in buying those two properties so that they could help monopolize personal social networking, basically, and the software that goes along with it. Now, these are the claims that the government is making. I don't know. You can decide, I will say, to the truth value of them. We'll see how the trial plays out. We'll see how everything goes. But that's really what the existential crisis is here that Meta is potentially facing. They could have their entire system of properties broken up in pretty dramatic and frankly consequential ways. Now you might be saying, well, look, that's the outgoing Biden administration. They don't really have any dog in this fight any longer. Once they're out, everything will change over. But no, that's not correct. You'll recall this trial that's happening in April stems from a 2020 lawsuit from the first Trump administration. Yes, the Biden administration just kept the trial process going. They actually didn't change it at all. They pursued it as much as they could in the handoff from the Trump administration. Well, they're going to hand it right back to Trump. here. It's originally from the very first Trump administration. Again, same lawsuit, 2012's purchase of Instagram and 2014's purchase of WhatsApp. That's what's on the table. And so now you have to ask yourself a question, which is really quite basic. Would the Trump administration go after Meta if Dana White, who has a close relationship, a very close relationship with incoming President Donald Trump, would they really go after that business when Dana is sitting on the board? The answer is we shall see. I have no idea. It is hard to know. Because they brought the lawsuit the first time and it lived on up until now, and we're now just months away, it is very possible they will continue to see it through, and Dana White sitting on the board does not provide sufficient amount of insurance. But let us be not people who were born yesterday. Clearly his position in this company on the board is designed to act as some kind of an institutional buffer between any attempt by the Trump administration to continue further, you name it, go after the company for antitrust or any other form of attack that they particularly choose. Dana being on there is insurance. It's a buffer zone. It's something to help protect them, because now somebody who is deeply enmeshed, if not so much in MAGA world, although I would say that as well, but certainly within close ties to the president, has a role and a giant financial stake to certainly some degree with that company. It is much less likely that they're going to face, at a bare minimum, the more consequential results of some law enforcement or other kinds of political and legislative action against them. The worst of it is likely to be reduced, if not potentially all of it. That's why, in my opinion anyway, he's on this board. You have to connect the dots of the power players involved, what they want, and who can help them get there. Now, of course, there could be more to it than just this. You'll recall Mark Zuckerberg does appear to be a legitimate MMA and UFC fan. He's had the Apex shut down for him to see a show. He has befriended various fighters who don't seem to care that he is an oligarch who's potentially poisoning our information environment. But nevertheless, he has managed to infiltrate his way into the MMA world, because, of course, the MMA world is a place where nobody asks questions about whether you're a good or bad person, just are you powerful or not? Hey, if you are, come on in. And they have embraced him. And so to that effect, he does have some relationship now to the MMA world, and you might be saying he's just giving a job to his friend. That may play some role. And in fact, there's another way to look at it too, which is, well, maybe they're bringing him involved because Dana White obviously has a connection, a deep one at the executive level, with TKO. And TKO is kind of at the vanguard, not just of acquiring and developing sports properties, but the future of where television is headed. And it's not like a company like Meta doesn't have an ability to make inroads in these conversations with other entities in the television and broadcasting space should they need to, but having Dana White there probably makes it a little bit easier, and there is at least some guidance he could provide. I don't think the only reason that Dana White is on the board of Meta is only to act as a buffer or insurance against prosecution from the incoming Trump administration. There are other ways in which to examine it, but hello, that has to be the chief one by a million miles, because it's the most amount of value that he can possibly add to that board in any way over the course of his life. And listen, you can see this turn that they're pulling at Meta is not just isolated to having Dana on the board. They actually announced this week a complete change and nearly basically a 180 in their content moderating policy. And of course, why might they be doing that? You could say, oh, well, it was totally unsuccessful and it backfired and now they're having a better policy. I don't think that the policy was enacted all that great, although I think that that read of it is probably not the correct answer. And in fact, for people who think that there's going to be less censorship, I don't know what to tell you, except you are probably in for a very rude awakening. They're not going to reduce the amount of censorship. They're just going to change who is the recipient of it. Let's be very, very clear about that. But beyond that, why are they doing that? Well, you'll recall they're not big fans, obviously, in Trump world of Mark Zuckerberg, of what Meta had done under their previous content moderating policies. With the new incoming president changing it in this way, and particularly some of the profound ways they're doing, is obviously some kind of a signal to the administration that they want to play ball with what they have going on. They want to play ball with their content policies. They want to play ball in whatever way they can with the administration to avoid, again, antitrust enforcement or other forms of legal harassment. That's the reality in play here. So again, when you really realize that Mark Zuckerberg was, by Donald Trump previously, threatened to be thrown in jail for the rest of his life, and now he's back in office, you're donating to the inauguration fund, you're changing the content moderating policies, and then on top of it, you're taking a trusted friend and basically almost an advisor, at least in an informal capacity, of the president, and you're putting that guy on the board. Guys, connect the dots here. Doesn't take a genius to do it. Look at it for what it is. Just to crystallize the whole thing in a moment, we should really go back to the New Year's Eve some time ago when Dana White was seen exchanging blows with his wife, but of course he hit her as well. You'll recall afterwards he did a press conference where he had said that the punishment he was going to get, because there wasn't one coming from TKO, there wasn't one coming from UFC at all, was just that he had to be known as somebody who had done something like this. And in fact, he implored everyone to not defend him. So I'm going to ask you to do the same. He said it, don't defend me, so we won't. I would just like to point out what actually was the punishment for that. Saying that there would be some kind of social cost that he would have to bear. Where is the evidence that there was any social cost? The man now sits on the board of directors for one of the most successful companies today and one of the richest companies essentially of all time. What was the cost? What burden did he have to bear? What role did it play at all? And what does Meta signal in taking someone who had done something like that, who suffered no consequences, and then bringing them onto the board of directors? What does that say about any of their priorities and what they plan to do in terms of executive or otherwise board of director content, and to what extent any of that matters? I mean, there's broader implications and conversations that have to go beyond just this, but just taking that moment in time from the MMA world and then using it there was no cost to bear. There was nothing done about it. There was in every way imaginable a promotion of some kind that happened after that. Not any kind of decline in position, decline in monetary reward, decline in social standing, decline in business community standing, nothing. If anything, things have gone up for him since that time. I don't even know if there was a downside to that in terms of any cost he had to bear. In my opinion, Mark Zuckerberg is just trying to save his ass, and he's hoping that some changes to the way they did business, some of them pretty important and big, but on top of that, insulating himself by bringing in people who were formerly of George Bush's White House, who are now obviously central figures at the company, and now bringing in UFC president, CEO Dana White as insurance and buffer to protect them both against this incoming antitrust trial, if it even stays on the tracks at this point, and anything else that could come up down the road. That's why he's there. Connect the dots, follow the money. It'll take you a lot further than believing press releases.